Good morning, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us during our technical issues, but I think we've recovered from it. So Ayubowan and welcome everyone. My name is Aarti Dharmadasa. I'm the Operations Director of the Alliance. My role with the Alliance is supported by the USAID SAIL project. Today marks the 5th Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance Resilience webinar. And we're very, very excited about our topic today, which is on passion, purpose, and resilience. Our panel today is made up of 4 of our founding members. And it is my pleasure to introduce them to you today. First up, we have Shiromal Cooray. She is the chairperson and managing director of Jetwing Travels. She's also the chairperson of Jetwing Hotels. Shiromal has also served as president of the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators, and she's the co-chair of the Tourism Alliance. Malik Fernando is the managing director of Resplendent Ceylon. Resplendent is a collection of small luxury resorts in Sri Lanka. Malik is also the director of Sri Lankan Airlines and Sri Lankan Catering, and he serves alongside Shiromal as the co-chair of the Tourism Alliance. Third up, we have Harith Perera. Harith is the Executive Vice President of Business Development with Acorn Ventures Private Limited. Previously, Harith was part of the team that led the launch of the Diatherm Travel in Sri Lanka and the Maldives. He's the immediate past president of the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators and a former board member of the Tourism Promotions Bureau. Our final panelist, Fitch, is the managing director of Teardrop. Teardrop is a collection of small, intimate luxury hotels in Sri Lanka. Prior to founding Teardrop, Henry held business consultant with leading hotels of the world, as well as hotels and resorts in India.
And you can tell that you're thinking.
Last but not least, I'm very pleased to introduce to you our moderator, Katherine Droga. Katherine is founder of Droga & Co., a global tourism consultancy specializing in destination and industry development and marketing. Katherine is also an advisor.
I will deal all with this internal stuff. So.
Over to you, Katherine.
Great, thank you, Aarti. And maybe if you can mute, I think we have an extra participant that's not meant to be on the link. Accidentally, so someone's come in, so if you could maybe mute them, that would be fantastic. Welcome everybody, and after a few couple of technical glitches, I'm really excited at what I hope will be a really robust discussion today. Having some of the industry leaders for the next hour to take us through how they are dealing with their businesses and the challenges we face at the moment. The way that we're going to take today's discussion is really to highlight some best practices or some learnings along the way that they're all experiencing in their businesses that perhaps can help our listeners as well across staffing, COVID reopening guidelines, new opportunities, and most importantly, that whole inquiry booking lead time opportunity in which markets will return first. So I would like to kick off first, and I would encourage all listeners to post us some questions, anything that you'd like to ask specifically some of these leaders in the industry, just put it on the chat or on Facebook. So our first question I'd like to kick off with is really a staffing question. Given the current situation and staffing, being the biggest challenge at the moment with no income and revenue, what's the situation in your businesses and how are you using staff in this downtime? Maybe Henry, Harith, could we hear from you please, Harith? You're on mute.
Okay, hi everyone. I hope I'm clear. Okay.
Perfect.
So it was an interesting time for us because not only HEMAS actually had their first female CEO for a conglomerate, they also had they facilitated a management buyout. So 6 of us were working for HEMAS. We launched Acorn Ventures in March. And that happened just before the lockdown period. With that, we have a set of staff which we took the responsibility to look after them. And our philosophy is staff is key valuable asset. So when times are down, we thought somehow we need to be resilient and look after them. So what we did was we decided not to have any pay cuts as at now. We decided to keep them engaged because they are at home. We had various competitions online. We had Minds of Play where we divided the entire company into 6 houses, and we had various topics where they had to compete, like, to do a 30-second plank, do a Vesak during Vesak, Father's Day, take a photo and write something about the father. So we kept the engagement levels going with the staff. And during the trouble times, because for us, especially travel and aviation, staff is our key asset. So that's how we coped up. And hopefully when things come back to normal, we have a motivated team.
And congratulations again on your CEO announcement. That's a fantastic kind of celebration of, an opportunity and a big company. So terrific. Malik, what's happening with Resplendent and what's been the challenge? It's a huge issue. So how have you dealt with it?
I mean, the biggest challenge is we have very little visibility as to when this will turn around. So when you're making plans, with what sort of time frame are you looking at it? So we took a decision that, as many others also have, that we will not let anybody go. We didn't do any salary cuts until actually this month, where we brought in some voluntary reductions amongst the higher levels. So basically the low and mid level we've left untouched. Apart from a social obligation, staff, it's a culture. So our net promoter scores of sort of 95 plus, all that is related to all the training that we put in. So it's a very difficult decision, particularly if you're a high touch environment. If you let people go or they struggle, that's going to impact your culture and performance when you come back. So we actually stood by them with some cuts, but also we spent a lot of time on preventive maintenance, a lot of training, health and safety, and utilizing them, because you obviously don't want people to be idle. So generally we opened on the 1st of June, and the culture and morale is very high. So far so good. Okay, thank you for that. Shiromal, huge staff obviously that you are leading and managing. So really keen to see how you're going and what you've been doing in this sort of really tough time in terms of staff.
Yeah, so Katherine, as the others said, we haven't been that fortunate because, as you say, we have over 3,500 staff in our hotels and the travel companies. So although we didn't also let go of any of the most valuable asset, as everybody says, but we did have to take voluntary pay cuts, and we did across the board because everybody said they all want to contribute. So all of us have taken pay cuts, and the teams in the hotels have done, as the others said, the preventive maintenances. We've trained them. And of course, in the last 2 months, we had to do a lot of training on the new guidelines because all our hotels were never closed. We had skeleton staff working, and now over the weekend, we are having some business. So the hotels are open, and now they're all familiar with the new guidelines. As for the travel, the DMC is a bigger challenge because there is no business at all. There is no hope of things improving in the foreseeable future too. So they've been also doing, as Harith said, various different things, but and we kept them engaged. But unfortunately, we have all taken pay cuts.
And I heard that when we were talking before, you've got some kind of smaller initiatives just to help people from an income perspective or access to markets for some of the people that you work with in the communities. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's more with the different hotels. We also found that they are the people we used to buy stuff from, because we did a lot of buying from around the communities, as I was mentioning to you, like the spices. We had few females around the area whom we bought spices from or vegetables. So they had no market for their product. So what we did was we brought them to Colombo, the produce, and then we are now selling it off either online or through our networks. So that at least we are suffering, but we thought we shouldn't let the others suffer as well. So we're trying to minimize the impact of no tourists in the communities we are working with as much as possible, Katherine.
That's such a good point. And I think for our listeners today, I think that's a really interesting one and a really valuable one about how do we help the rest of the supply chain that feeds into tourism and into your, especially in accommodation providers, you know, all of those areas, how do we help them to get access to new markets? It's a really small, simple idea that you did, but I think it makes a big difference. So thank you. This question I know that all our listeners are really, you know, keen to hear from you about is this. You're all very reliant on international markets, as is Sri Lanka overall. Really keen to know, are you getting any inquiries? And if you are, which markets they're coming from and what are forward bookings looking like? Obviously, I'm not talking about next month, but any insights that you have for our audience would be hugely valuable. So Henry, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. I think knowing what's going to happen in the future is obviously difficult while we don't have clarity in the opening up of the airport, and the delay with that is a concern. But at the same time, hopefully it means that we have a more sort of clear and carefully planned approach in the future, so that everyone knows actually where they stand. So I think the consistency of messaging is very important. Right now, we're obviously focusing on the local market. And it's been a big change for us over the last 16 months or so after Easter. Before Easter last year, we had about 2% of our market was Sri Lankan tourists. And we've had a huge change around in that. I mean, I say huge. Last year, we had about 15% local market. And this year, I'm sure will actually be even larger. We're currently running our tea bungalows at around, in June, we're around about 35 to 45% occupancy. Our beach property, Kumu Beach, was up at around 30%, and I think July is looking better as well. It's obviously predominantly weekend traffic, but that's a start. In terms of moving forward in the international bookings, I think inquiries have started to come in, but very much for 2021. There's very little for 2020, and I think this airport and the testing procedures are to do with that. We've had inquiries. We've actually had a wedding booking again for Kumu Beach for March next year. This comes along with flexible cancellation policies and early bird offers and things like that. Essentially, we're not charging any cancellation if people cancel more than 7 days in advance, and I think that's quite an important point for other hotels as well, that I'm sure DMCs and tour operators would agree, but flexibility with cancellations and rates, I think, is very important right now. Medium term, we're hoping that the Asian markets will pick up. India, you know, again, it depends on what happens in terms of the number of cases that they have in these countries, but I think India, Hong Kong and Singapore for us will be our largest markets in the medium term. And then I'm pretty sure that by 2021 we'll be back to our largest markets like the UK and Australia and the US starting to really come back in numbers.
Okay, thanks Henry. And I'm going to get back to how you've grown your domestic later in the discussion, but we'll just stay at the moment on which markets. Malik, what's happening at Resplendent at the moment?
So we reopened on the 1st of June, and as Henry said, I mean, it's obviously a domestic focus, but I think it's a good thing because we've had so many Sri Lankans who travel overseas for a holiday, and they never really considered holidaying here. And when they see the caliber of resorts that many of us have, you know, they're actually surprised and delighted. So I think in a way, you're engaging with the relevant demographics for your product, who may not have considered, you know, resorts here. So if they go overseas and pay top dollar for a resort overseas, why not spend that at home? And that obviously is going to be the trend in many countries in terms of local and regional travel. So, I mean, we've discounted, we've not slashed rates because I firmly believe that is counterproductive. So occupancies are low, but that's fine. We're losing money, but you know, the whole point is that you want to get the systems working again, the staff back in the saddle, and then hold out till we get more volumes coming in. although the delay in the airport is disappointing, I think it's understandable. The last thing anyone wants is a secondary wave here. And our messaging has been around, I'm talking about pitching to the overseas market for when they will travel, is about a refuge, how Sri Lanka's handled it, the fact that our resorts are pristine, off-grid, the fact that our tourism product hasn't been overdeveloped, where you've got hotels cheek by jowl, you've got hundreds of hotels next to each other. Many of our properties are isolated. So that gives you that automatic physical distancing that travelers are looking for. So, we've also been spending time on, various types of projects that are important, but not necessarily urgent, which you wouldn't do when you're very, very busy. So honestly, if not for the fact that we're bleeding cash, in terms of a mental reset, in terms of strategic thinking, yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. But what's killing us, obviously, is that we don't have revenue. But it really has been a reset for us, for sure. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Malik. Harith, I'd be really clear to understand from a DMC's perspective, this is, as Shiromal mentioned, this is, really, really difficult time. What are you seeing in terms of inquiries, any inquiries? What's going on for you, and which markets do you think are going to come back first?
Okay, so we got a sort of a mixed signals on that. To start with, we were quite encouraged with the response of the European market, especially the German market. We are getting some decent confirmed bookings January onwards, which is January onwards. And yes, and I was speaking to the sales team 2 days back, and they're saying even for September there are inquiries coming in. So I'm pretty pleased with the whole interest levels shown by the European markets. But I'm a bit sort of disappointed because there's absolutely nothing coming from the Asian market. But then again, the Asian market works like that. When the airport do open up, I'm sure, it's last minute. They might come over for the weekend, especially the Indians. So it's understandable. They're waiting till the airport fully opens up and then they'll make the inquiries. But the interest of some of the European clientele is quite encouraging. There's a lot of couples, solo travelers looking at September, October, and maybe families or extended small mini groups January onwards. What is a bit discouraging is the high cost of the airfares, especially until December. The cost of airfares is very high. We need to be careful of that. At the same time, even the postponement, obviously it was postponed for health reasons, but the airlines have lined up, they have slot their flying time and all that. So suddenly for them to change again by 15 days or 30 days is also not the ideal. Because most of the airlines were looking at coming from August onwards.
Okay, yeah, and I know Emirates, have really opened up their flight capacity around the globe. So that's, an opportunity for Sri Lanka as well in terms of, aviation support.
That's right.
Shiromal, again, you wear two hats. So tell us what you're seeing in terms of, obviously the domestic sector is filling some of your hotels, as you've mentioned, but what's happening in the DMC space?
Sorry, tell me again, Katherine.
No worries. So what's happening from your perspective in the DMC space? So what are you seeing in terms of forward bookings or any inquiries, and which markets?
Yeah, so I tend to agree with Harith that there is a interest from Europe, whether it's from the UK or other European countries, but there isn't that much from the Asian countries. But unfortunately, although the interest is there and the tour operator wants to promote it, clients seem to want to come as well, but not in the numbers that we were used to before. But there are so many other variables. I mean, like countries should open up borders, airlines, as Harith said, should be able to give affordable pricing. So I don't know whether all these things would come together soon. As far as we are concerned, we have kind of written off this year, and we are looking at completely redoing the whole thing from next year.
Okay, and in terms of these inquiries, do you think people are going to be staying longer because it's going to be a bit more difficult to, the effort to travel? Do you think there's an opportunity for Sri Lanka in that space, Shiromal?
Yes, I would think, especially in the winter months, maybe from the Nordic countries and also Europe. Winter is going to be, I mean, winters are always cold and unpleasant to, especially the older people. And now when they're talking about maybe the virus could come more aggressively in the winter, I would think, and I'm hopeful, I'm hoping that there would be more older Europeans who would want to come to warmer countries and then spend maybe 3-4 weeks, perhaps even maybe months, because we do have a fairly large repeat clientele from Europe coming anyway. So we are hoping that them and maybe more people would want to come and stay longer, maybe with the Ayurveda, because they're also doing more health immunity boosting treatments and all of that. So maybe that's a new area where we can look at promoting as a country. Yeah, so there are possibilities, Katherine.
Okay, thank you. We've just had a really good question. I'm going to freestyle it a bit. We've got a question from Ashan here that I really like on the chat, so I'm going to throw that out there. So do you feel that pitching to the local market on a patriotic level would appeal to visitors? And understanding on the fact that local bookings would be assisting not only the property and the brand, but also the entire chain of supply and thereby the community at large. What do you think of that? Malik, I'm going to throw to you on that one.
I think absolutely, because I mean, Sri Lankans generally are patriotic. They're proud of how we've handled the crisis. There is that pent-up need to travel after the lockdown, as many of us saw. Also, a local traveler can visit, 3, 4, 5 times a year, not like an overseas traveler. You've got brilliant highway access. So I really think, I mean, again, our Love Local campaign is focusing on that. So patriotic as well as business sense. But I think the fact that many didn't know about the quality of properties that were available in the country, now that we're all pitching to the local market and they see our resorts and they are unable to travel overseas for those who would, there are others anyhow who would holiday back here. I think that is very, very positive outcome of this situation, where going forward, all of us will have high local content.
Okay, thank you. Harith, have you got anything to add to that?
No, I think it's a good thing to do to encourage local people to go and visit the properties. I was in a property 2 weeks back, and it was my family and another couple. It's a 140-room hotel. So it motivates the staff to see people coming in. It suddenly got activated. The whole, the F&B, the pool, the housekeeping, it encourages them. And then as time goes by, the 2 rooms became 10 rooms. So it's a good thing to do. But that's the only choice we have until the airport opens up.
Absolutely. And I think Ashan, who raised this, I think he makes a really interesting point around, he uses the word patriotic level to appeal to visitors. But what he's saying here is, what Shiromal is touching on is the supply chain around, by helping go to a property or taking a trip, you're helping the supply chain in terms of the fruit and vegetables, the people that are cleaning the rooms, the spices, whatever it is that is around that perhaps is, going to support the economy. And we know that value chain of tourism is so long that I think it's a really interesting way. And if you think about the consumer as well, that's quite an emotional reason to want to travel. So I think it helps us to kind of help others, which is a really big part of, that concept of purpose-driven travel. Henry, can I ask you, this
as well? It also, I think this comes back to last year again as well. The exact same thing happened last year. And that's, I guess, put us in a position now where, in a way, we knew how to go about relaunching to the local market, and it certainly changed our business plan. But it's something that, unfortunately, we were practiced at doing because of last year's event.
Yep, that's a really good point. I'll stay with you, Henry, at the moment, just around COVID reopening guidelines. This has obviously been a big area of focus for operators, small, medium and large. We've had the release of the SLDTA guidelines, which are quite comprehensive. And so I guess from an operator perspective, can you give us a bit of an update of what you've been doing in this space?
Yeah, sure. So as you say, we've got the SLTDA guidelines, the MOH guidelines, the guidelines from WHO as well. And we put together our own guidelines based on all of those. Since then, we've actually gone several steps further, and we've employed the help of a couple of doctors who have a company called Samana Health. And one of the doctors is an infectious diseases specialist, and the other one is a workplace health and safety specialist. And they came to the Wallowa, and we had staff from all of our properties come and learn from them, and they did a 3-day training. They've drawn up a 73-page checklist that's specific to our hotels. So it takes into account,
That's pretty intense. Oh, yeah. Am I there? Yes. You can. Yeah, that's pretty intense. 73 pages. It's like and I get this point of end-to-end touch points with the guest and how important that is. From your perspective, with something that thorough that you've done for the business, is there a learning in that process for people that are listening around what are those key things that have been critical in that kind of checklist?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the first thing also is the fact that we were doing this not just for our guests, but also for the staff. I think, back in March or April, when we were first basically closed, I think the staff were happy that there were no guests there because they were scared. And a couple of months later, they're actually desperate to have guests back, but they're still a little bit concerned about what that means. So I think from a hotel's point of view, I think it's the training that's done, I think, is crucial to making sure that the staff understand what they need to be doing to keep themselves safe, as well as the guests safe. And also there's a trickle-down effect into the community as well, because they all go home and tell their friends and family how they're supposed to wear a mask, the fact that they're not supposed to just take off their mask when they're eating and put it in their pocket. There are procedures that you should be doing, because the outside of the mask is essentially what's in theory got the coronavirus on it. So by putting your hands on that to put it in your pocket is not a great way of working it. I think since doing the training, the staff are certainly a lot more comfortable. And I think there are various things that we did. We did a walkthrough of the entire property, checking up on every single touch point that there is from a guest point of view. I think some of the more important things that we learned was about the goods receiving area. Learning just basically do not let suppliers into the property if you can possibly help it. If your goods receiving area is good enough for unloading the produce, then your staff need to be taking it from there to the kitchen. Don't rely on the suppliers to do it. We can obviously trust our staff more because we have the procedures in place. Also things like unpacking the bags that have come from outside when it comes to perishable goods. Unpack those bags into your own bags and dispose of or give the bags back to the supplier. Things like that I think really helped. The mask wearing side of things and washing hands side, the doctors are adamant that's 80% of this, what we need to be doing. But the other 20% is also critical. Understanding, how to chop fruit without, if there is coronavirus on the outside of the fruit, by chopping and slicing through it is essentially putting the virus throughout the fruit. I think if kitchens are maintaining sort of HACCP quality standards, then there's not too much to worry about. I think that's, those are some of the key takeaways, I think.
Thank you. No, that's fantastic. Some practical insights. Malik, I know you're doing the same. I mean, everyone is doing the same, but I'll just touch on you very briefly, your stay safe protocols. You've done 12 hours of training, I think, for all your staff.
Yeah.
56 standards. It's a lot of work. In a nutshell, what are the kind of key learnings or to think about or apply for people that are listening?
I mean, I think when we develop the standards, it's called Safe Stay, and it covers every aspect. I won't repeat a lot of the things that Henry said, which I fully echo. It is that the deployment team and the management team must be the same. You can't separate it. Also, the training protocols, training materials should be the same as the protocol. Otherwise, you have a very complex, very simple protocol, and there is a disconnect. So we did the health and safety protocol in a very graphical, diagrammatic way, which is very easy to follow and to amend. Also, you need to strike a balance in terms of not striking the fear of Moses into staff, but as well, not being complacent as well. So I think that's where these manuals come to play, because you kind of explain the science behind every particular standard. So that's been, I think, good, even post-COVID, going forward, that, in terms of health and safety, sanitation is going to be a key consumer requirement. So it will stand us all in good stead.
Great, thank you. In this downtime, can you take me through perhaps any of the opportunities that you've been thinking about or doing differently or evolving your business differently? I'm not talking about how to do staff, but a new thing that you've done in your business during this time that you weren't doing before. Henry, can we maybe start with you?
Sure. I think that the biggest opportunity that we've had is to take the time that we are all less busy to concentrate on our sustainability program. In April, we signed up and became members with an accreditation called Travel Life. This has been, it's not just a box ticking exercise, but essentially what Travel Life does is provide a comprehensive framework to work towards, and working towards greater sustainability, making sure we have robust policies in place to improve our eco-credentials, and also our work within the local community as well. In the past, we've been doing ad hoc community work, and we support a charity called BACD, which is a children's disability charity. We've donated money and time and products and goods to other charities as well, and orphanages and elders' homes and things. But I think by putting a better structure in place will mean that we're doing this in a much better and more far-reaching way as well.
Great. So it's this time to be able to do something different that you'd always thought of doing, but you hadn't done to the full extent that you wanted to. So I think that's...
It's not an extensive process, right? It's something that can be done. It's more about time and having... We've got 250 staff, who have been engaged in this process. So I think it's now's the time to be doing it. And I think also Sri Lanka is really well placed to become a much more sustainable country. And I know it's something that the Alliance, we've been talking about this for the last year, but it's, there's no reason why Sri Lanka can't be a world beater in a sort of sustainable tourism sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're actually going to deep dive a bit more into that in just a second. Harith, I'd love to know, what are you doing differently at the moment with the teams in terms of different products or experiences, or just running your business? What have you done differently?
So what we did was, during the lockdown period, there were so many theories about, the post-COVID, how the travel will behave, how the industry will be. So what we did was we actually went to the staff, the key 40-50 staff, and we had a sort of a scenario planning exercise, period of 3 weeks. We termed it LUVW. L means business has come down, will it stay like that for a long time? U mean it will come back slowly. V means it will come down slowly, but it will go up rapidly. And W means a second verb. So with that, for each scenario, what will be the repercussions? What will be the things, the opportunities that will come? What are things we should change differently? So it was a huge exercise, and we got outside help to come and help us as well. With that, we came up with top 8 initiatives. Some of them are very interesting. We are questioning why we should pay rent. Why should we be in office? We are not a hotel. We don't need physical presence. We are questioning how we market ourselves. We are questioning, we are running after weddings, but, people are spending money on honeymoon. So it's different sort of experiences, different products. People will not want to stay in 3-star. They might want a 4-star because they feel safer there. They might aspire 4-star to be a better safety standard hotel. So getting into the psyche of, possible tour operators and clients was one exercise we did in detail. And And the 3 floors we operate, we are now working with 1 floor, and we got our staff to be more tech savvy, and so far it's working out. So let's see.
Right, that's good, and that's I think that's a really good insight for all our listeners. Is you dropped, you know, the expectations that you had before, and you've started to look at different ways that the consumer will be looking for stuff, as well as different operating ways. Shiromal, you've done some interesting things as well in this time. Can you take us through one of your ideas, and that it's come from your staff, hasn't it?
Yeah, so we as Harith said, our teams have also broken into different groups. I'm talking about our DMC now. And one of the teams actually came up with a education program, and actually it's being launched tomorrow. It's on travel and tourism. So they've got their first batch of 20 people, and it's a very, very comprehensive program, and they've got good lectures from within, people with a lot of experience, and it has also got NVQ accreditation now. So yeah, maybe that's a new line that we are going to look at, you know, education in tourism, and they're also doing, we have foreign language speaking, I mean foreign nationals working with us. So they've also started teaching Chinese, Russian, Japanese, French, and it's amazing. There's quite a big interest in that as well. So yeah, maybe we'll have a Jetwing Academy very soon. You never know. So,
crazy. I mean, it's not crazy. It's brilliant. I think it's looking at as a challenge, moving it into an opportunity. And the fact that this came from your staff, I think this is what's really interesting. Is you know, is engaging with your staff to find solutions, and I think that can be applied to all people's businesses. Thank you, Malik. You know, tell us. Sorry, Shiromal, you had one more thing.
No, I'm fine, Katherine.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Sorry. Malik, can you take us through one thing that you've done in your business that you weren't doing before very well?
It's not half as interesting as what Shiromal just said, but I think, you know, fundamentally what we did was we just looked at why do we need an office? Why do we need to be so busy? So, I mean, I'm being facetious, but essentially we try to digitize and streamline. And in the end, we've allowed people to do a lot more deep work where they're not constantly, you know, going from meeting to meeting to meeting. So many things can be done in the cloud, so many processes. So I think streamlining, re-engineering your processes. Why do you actually need to do this? Can't you automate this? So we spent a lot of time that we wouldn't normally have. You could sort of spend 2-3 months, which when we're normally busy, we have no chance in hell of being able to do a deep dive. So for us, that was a huge benefit, just to sort of reorganize the business. Perfect.
Thank you. One of the things that Henry touched on before, which I think is so critical, is this part about sustainable Sri Lanka. So, you know, as an opportunity for everyone in this space. It seems to be a critical pillar for the Alliance as well as all your businesses. So why are you investing so heavily from a time, resource, etc. in this space? And I would like to go to the champion of sustainability first, Shiromal, because I feel like Jetwing have done this for a very long time. So why do you do this, and why is this becoming more and more important?
So, Katherine, as I was telling you, it goes back to our origins. You know, when our dad started the company over almost 50 years ago, I remember that sleepy fishing village we went to, you know, scattered little huts around. And so he used to, you know, think about it. And he said, you know, we are encroaching into these people's lives, and their lives are going to change forever. So he was very keen to make sure that we had very little impact on that community, on the environment, and he was also desperately wanting to engage them as much as he could. So he was a builder, and he would give, because normally they were fishermen in the area. So just 1 or 2 members went fishing, and the rest would just laze around, you know. It was a very easy life for them. So he would get them involved in the building, and little by little we got them involved, and he would talk to them, talk to the people and the elders of the area. And so it was, I think it's in our DNA that we do work with the communities. So we never set out to be a sustainable company, but from our beginning, we've always done that. You know, for example, there was a time when our dad was alive, the all-inclusive concept was very, very rampant, and all the tour operators were forcing us to convert some of our hotels into all-inclusive hotels. But he just said no, because what he said was, if it's an all-inclusive hotel, the guests are compelled to stay within the hotel, and why would they even want to set out, because they've paid already and they're going to stay. So he said our hotels are going to be places where they could go out, the guests could go out and maybe spend some money and have a Coke, or maybe they could have a meal, they could go for an excursion with someone. So and then he also said that would spur the hotel or the team to make sure they retain the client by offering a better service inside the hotel. So as a result, so it was always like that. And for example, we have a travel destination management company, and we could have had our own travel company, a travel desk in the hotels, but he just said no. He said we must work with the people around. So we used vehicles that belong to people in the vicinity, and Jetwing Travels never had anything to do with the hotel travel counter. It was always the people around. So just to give you an example, that has been in our DNA, Katherine. And so since then, whatever we did, we always did making sure the community is at the center. Even the design of a hotel. I mean, there's an unwritten law in Sri Lanka that a hotel should not go beyond the coconut tree. But unfortunately, there are so many monsters that have come up, you know, concrete monsters, which is to me it's very sad. We've gone to a community, taken their space, and we've created these huge things that stand out as sore thumbs. But then, so we are very careful. Even our designs, we try to blend with the area. We study the area first, and then we make sure we inform the architect to spend time at that location and try and blend in with the community and the environment. So yeah, so just to tell you that it's in our DNA. We are not doing it for any other reason, but just so that we can cohabit, we can live and let live in that space.
Well said, Shiromal. Thank you very much for that. Malik, I know you guys do a huge amount in the sustainability space as well, but rather than taking us through what you do, can you tell me why you think it's beneficial for the customer? So what is this piece around, we've talked about community and we've talked about the real benefits. Shiromal has kind of deep dived into that. Can you take us through from a customer perspective, do you see this as a growing piece of consumer kind of lens, or what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was important before the crisis. I think afterwards it's redoubled in importance, particularly for the independent traveler. A lot of their decision-making was around travel with purpose. They want ethical travel, because that whole trend, whether it's tea or whether it's tourism, consumers in wealthy countries, you know, they're keenly aware of inequality, they're keenly aware of environmental destruction. So given a choice, they would seek to work with a brand that has a very clear message in terms of what they stand for. So that's their way of giving back. So when you have, you know, in the research phase, I mean, first of all, you can't do something like this simply because you're saying it's a marketing gimmick, because that's greenwashing, you might call it. But it's got to be something you believe in, because the way social media and TripAdvisor works, if you're faking it, it's going to be very, very apparent. So it's got to be something that's genuinely sustainable. But a traveler who's looking at a selection of destinations, look at Costa Rica. Someone who's very conscientious would say, look, I really want to go to Costa Rica. I want to go to New Zealand. I want to go to Bhutan. But you get more and more travelers in that direction. So as some of us said earlier, Sri Lanka has this huge opportunity, because tourism, although we've been at it since the 70s more than many other countries in Asia, it's still at its infancy in Sri Lanka, because de facto we were frozen for 30 years. It only really started about 8 or 9 years ago. So we have this opportunity to position this country as a hub for sustainability. There is no other country that has the range of attractions and diversity in such a compact space. You know, we're far more varied than Costa Rica, for example, which is considered the most sustainable country out there. So I firmly believe that post the crisis, there'll be fewer, longer trips There'll be more travel with purpose. In the research phase, which is the most important, they will be looking at countries which essentially are more sustainable in terms of the environment and social justice, in terms of community-based tourism. We heard that from Sri a couple of weeks ago. So I think that's, in my view, that's how I'm looking to package my business. And that's how I think Sri Lanka should be packaged as a whole, because that gives us a huge point of difference in terms of repeat visitors. If someone really connects with the destination, it doesn't become just a bucket list. I've done Sri Lanka, right, what do I know next year? Nepal. You want someone to connect, the type of traveler we're talking about, who will adopt a cause in Sri Lanka, whether it is nature, whether it is community, and come and visit us every year, every 2 to 3 years. Because if we increase our repeat traveler component, it makes life from a marketing perspective so much easier. A repeat traveler ends up investing and so on. So that's why I believe it is critical that we pursue that path.
Great. Thank you. Well said. Thank you for that. I think that's a really good point. I'm going to ask one more question about pipeline and future stuff. So everyone's trying to just survive at the moment. We're trying to just get through to when the airport opens, and we know that this is still uncertain. We're waiting for the next milestone for that. We're waiting for international travel policies for other destinations. And, you know, it's a crystal ball at the moment. We have to wait to see when those policies shift and open, and it could be we take it month by month. But your long view of tourism, like, are you looking at new opportunities as well, or are you just trying to survive? So where are you at with that?
So that's an interesting question. From an Acorn group point of view, Katherine, see, our core business is inbound travel, outbound travel, and the aviation services, which we handle about 12 airlines, GSA. So what we will obviously focus and try to grow those core areas. In addition to that, we are looking at some new opportunities as well, which are at times indirectly sort of connected to travel and aviation. For example, we are looking at how we can add value by having some sort of a understanding or a JV with hotel schools, so that we can develop, people into the industry, into the hospitality industry. We are looking at taking the burden of sales and marketing and maybe social media marketing from villas and small hotels, where we have the capability and the resources to handle that. We are looking at if a hotel or a travel company needs business restructuring or tax solutions, certain digital services. So various sort of other indirect related businesses where we think we can add value because we come from a conglomerate with, all the people have worked 20, 30 years there. And we can pass that on to individual owners, villa owners, how we can, add value to them. So that's something we are looking at. We have identified those products, and we are in the process of now going to the market with it.
Fantastic, thank you. From a hotelier perspective, are you guys looking at any new hotel investments? I mean, it's a crazy question to ask at the moment, but when we talk about passion, purpose, and resilience, it's about the long game of tourism as well as the short. Is that something that's even on the cards for you, or is it just like, no?
Yeah, no, it is on the cards very much so. I mean, this year, as Shiromal said earlier, this year is basically a write-off, but we've got every confidence that from next year onwards, things are going to next year recover, and then moving forward ahead of that, I think Sri Lanka tourism will bounce back, hopefully stronger than ever. Building projects and our pipeline is not just what's happening in the next 6 months. And as a group, we've decided that we do need to continue on investing. Later this year, we're starting to add another 20 rooms up in the hills. One hotel plus adding a couple of rooms to one of our bungalows. So it is definitely something that we're keen to push forward with. We obviously understand cash is king as well. I mean, we're delaying it slightly, but
of course.
by the end of this year, when hopefully we'll have a better view on where things are heading,
I think it's really important to hear that, because that stimulates the whole value chain in terms of hope and opportunity for, new development. So I think that's interesting. Shiromal, Sustainability, is there anything new on the cards for sustainability for you guys, or new developments, or etc.?
No, so the program that I mentioned to you about, what we call We Thrive, where we are working with the communities that are around our hotels, whether it's in Sigiriya or Bellavia or Yala. So we are very keen to develop that because we found that there are such interesting products that they do, and especially women, and they're very keen and they're very passionate about it. So we want to develop that. We are providing them with a lot of know-how as well. And so our teams from Colombo, because they have a lot of time now, so they go to the hotels and they work with these teams of people there. And so we're trying to develop new products, consumer items, and which we might find a market. We're already having a market. And so we are quite keen to do that. So to ensure there's sustainability in the environment, in the communities that we work with. Other than that, we're not looking at anything, adding on anything more to the existing products, Katherine, because they're quite kind of developed them to an extent that they can be self-sustained. Some of our products are complete carbon neutral. So we are, but we're now looking at the communities to help the communities.
And that's great to hear. That's fantastic. I want to shift gear a little bit now and talk a bit about the Alliance, because you're all founding, some of the 4 of the 8 founding members of the Alliance. I'd like to hear what you're most excited about, like how the Alliance can help collectively make a difference. So really practical ways that the industry can, you know, get involved. What are you, Malik, what are you most excited about, you know, an area to make a difference right now? What's needed?
Yeah, I think it's sharing best practice, because as I said earlier, our industry was frozen for a long period of time in terms of benchmarking with best practice in other destinations. That's what the Alliance is trying to assist towards in a very collaborative way, is to you know, share those experiences and to focus on learning and product improvement and development. One thing I forgot in my previous answer is that when you're positioned as a sustainable destination, you can also get a higher price point. Consumers are willing to pay more because they are, you know, they're booking with their heart. So that's obviously a key factor for Sri Lanka as we look to push our yields up from maybe a $65 room night to maybe a $80, you know, that $15 is pure profit. So I think for me, it's all about sharing and imparting best practices across the entire industry, just to get our game up across the board at whatever level and whatever product that you have.
Great, thank you. Henry, what's your thoughts on that?
I think Malik just touched on it as well. I think developing new experiences is crucial, and the Alliance and Alliance members, I think, need to really focus on those new experiences, make things as authentic, you know, possibly slightly quirky experiences as well, that mean that people will actually stay longer and come and visit time and again. It's not just a one visit country. You know, the more experiences we have, the more likely people are to do that. And I think actually in the last webinar with Dil from Kitesurfing Lanka, I mean, he seems to have absolutely nailed it in terms of you know, creating unique experiences that are also sustainable. And you know, it draws. He was saying, you know, his clients come back year after year after year because of both of those things. So I think that's what one of the areas that the Alliance will be focusing on.
Great. Harith, what about yourself?
Actually, I'm very passionate about consumer research. I think we don't have any research data at all. I'm coming from a FMCG background, and the type of research you do on consumer profiling, habits, and all that is enormous. If you take Sri Lanka Tourism, we hardly have anything on that. We have very, very old data sitting at SLTDA. So, you know, so that's one role the Tourism Alliance can play. If you take, you know, the structure of our tourism, you know, there are 2 big associations, that's Sligo and Tassel. And they don't have the resources and the time to, you know, spend time on consumer research and data and statistics. So that's one area where Tourism Alliance can add value and complement, you know, and add value to the industry and the 2 associations, so that they can market the destinations much better. So that's one thing I'm quite passionate about, and I see a big big gap in that. If we can plug
Right.
that, I think Alliance will add a lot of value to the industry.
Good, thank you. Shiromal.
Yeah, so the Alliance arose out of a necessity. You know, there was a dire need last year, just after the Easter bomb. We felt that there was a lot of inaction, there was a lot of talking, but nothing really was happening. And as usual, Malik came about, and then so many of us got together and then started this group of voluntary people coming together just for the betterment of the industry. So I think it's a group of people who are trying to fill in the gaps, as both all three were saying, Harith, Henry and Malik. So whenever there's a need, now Harith spoke about data, and Henry was talking about sustainability. I think sustainability is a great thing, that because everybody is involved with their different issues, whether it's the authority or the associations, trade associations, which have their own specific issues to deal with. Here is a group of people, and then whoever is interested can take on whatever project they like to do. And for example, if I'm passionate about sustainability, I can drive that. You know, we can get a set of guidelines issued, maybe have training programs to train people, because what is sustainability? Maybe some people don't even know what it means. I didn't know. I mean, we were doing it, but I didn't really know. I went to a seminar in the US, and they were talking about this, you know, and I'm thinking, hey, come on, we're doing this. And they were talking about, you know, changing water bottles, and we were using glass bottles for the last 10 or 15 years. So maybe some of us are already doing it, and we are just not marketing it. So there's a lot that we can do to the community, to our tour operator, or sorry, the travel and leisure industry. As Malik said, sharing best practices, learning from other people. So there's a lot that can be done by the Alliance, right. And I'm really keen, and we need to do some structural changes and all of that, which is being done. And after that, I think it's a very exciting time.
Thank you so much. And you touched on something there, Shiromal, about the Alliance starting with the need to deliver some action post, you know, action and communication post the Easter attacks was why the Alliance was formed. So can you all share some initiatives that are right now opportunities or coming up that help members that are listening here to be involved, that are collective opportunities for the industry or value? Malik, can we start with you? What's something the Alliance is doing that perhaps our members and listeners should be knowing?
Yeah, two things I'll mention. The two websites that we have are both very cutting edge, beautiful websites. lovesrilanka.org is our consumer site. So travelers from overseas wanting to learn about Sri Lanka, featuring our members, whether you're a tour operator, whether you're a hotel, whether you're a homestay. If you're a member of the Alliance, you get featured there. Then you have the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance.com, which is a trade site, which is all about learning, education. There's a jobs portal. I'm sure one of us will speak about that. So those two sites help both the consumer, which was the initial brief we developed after the Easter attacks, and progressively it worked towards the trade outreach in terms of sharing best practices, white papers, you know, research, as Harith said. So I think those two sites are something that I would invite all members to visit and make full use of.
Excellent, thank you for that. Henry, I think one of the things that we've alluded to in the last webinar as well, which I think is a really practical opportunity and platform for the industry to engage for conversion. What is that? Can you take us through what that is for the Alliance?
Yeah, I mean, it's to do with the domestic market, and we're launching a dedicated Love Sri Lanka website for the domestic market later on in July. All Tourism Alliance members, silver members, will be able to post special resident offers for free on that, and I think we'll be using the Alliance's social media channels and digital advertising to actually promote those offers out to everyone within the country. So it was part of our resilient action plan last year, and obviously now even more so we need to be moving ahead with this as we all rely on the local market. So
that's fantastic.
Project that will be launched.
Fantastic. So we'll go out and let everybody know about that shortly. So Love Sri Lanka Locals, which will be purely for the domestic market. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Harith, what else have we got going on that's going to help in the long term for our members and operators?
I think the big ticket item is the whole job portal. I'm really excited about it. You know, we have so much of human capital in the hospitality industry who has gone overseas. If you take places like Dubai, Malaysia, Maldives, there's so much of Sri Lankan talent that has gone there and working in the hospitality industry for various reasons, for exposure, for income. Now, some of them actually wants to come back here. And this job portal thing is one fantastic thing where the hotel can actually put an advertisement. They can apply from anywhere in the world. They can start a discussion, an interview. So getting our, you know, the whole skill set and our locals back into the industry is a great thing. And if this works, obviously, like I said earlier, it will really complement our industry, especially the hotel association. And by giving a better service, obviously for Sri Lanka as well. Because at the end of the day, the guest is looked after in a better way. So I find the job portal as a unique thing. It can really change our industry, our service standards. And that's something that can really add value to the industry as well. So I'm pretty excited about the job portal part.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm mindful of our time. We had a little bit of a glitch on the start, but I think we've still held quite a big audience with us. So I'd like to also now throw out to a few questions as well around from the audience and our listeners. And I'm just going to run through a couple here. And they're all different. So we're looking at very different perspectives here. The airport opening question has come up. Any thoughts on timings of that? I know we're not the airport and we can't answer that, but, you know, crystal ball kind of thing. Any thoughts on that, Harith?
Well, yeah, it was 1st August. It became 15th August. There's a talk saying end August. Whatever the date is, all I request is a firm date so that the airlines can, you know, get that together. At the moment, it stands 15th August. That's all I know.
Yeah. Okay. We've held another question about the domestic market. So this is a really big one because this is our opportunity now for the industry. And as we talked about, the Alliance is going to do our new push is Love Sri Lanka Local, which is our digital advisor or strategic partner for the Alliance is Antira Digital. So they are working with us to get that site up very quickly. But really from your perspectives, what are some of the things we need to be thinking about? And this question was specifically around how do we, any tips and insights to rally the domestic market more? So opening it up to all of you of, you know, any ways to kind of get that going.
I think I can start there if you like, Katherine. I think, you know, the fact, well, for smaller hotels like ours anyway, the local market is a lot of our bookings are exclusive use bookings. This may not help the larger hotels, but I think, you know, the remoteness of a lot of destinations in Sri Lanka, the fact right now as well that there's no known community spread, you know, until the airport opens up, there is, you know, supposedly a very, very low risk of any kind of coronavirus. So I think it's a case of people actually feeling comfortable to go and travel. All of the hotels and you know, transport providers actually making sure that they're doing things the correct way. Obviously, there is you know, it's rate driven as well to a certain extent because people are going away with their families, extended families. So I think it's rate driven, any value adds that can be done. One of the difficulties that we're finding is that it is predominantly weekend business, obviously. So we're, you know, very busy in some of the hotels Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday to Thursday, there's a lot less business going around.
Okay, fantastic. Anybody else want to jump in on the domestic play, what people should be thinking about in terms of maybe even the offers or the positioning?
Yeah, Katherine, one thing we've done is we brought in midweek rates because exactly as Henry said, everything is skewed towards the weekend. So having a slightly more competitive midweek rate or one or two value adds, I think helps. Also, the fact is now, with people working from home and so on, I think there is more propensity for people to go off even in the middle of the week, as long as they've got good Wi-Fi and work from whichever hotel they're staying in.
Okay, that's a really good one, actually. That's a really interesting point around that midweek work and play concept, which wasn't really that thought about before, but I know a lot of people that are thinking about that at the moment. So that's a really interesting one. Any other comments before we move on to the next question?
Katherine, let me tell you, yeah, we've also done that. We have had midweek rates as well. So we are looking at it in a different way, because we've always had a very good domestic market. Even in the good years, we had about 20-30% of our business coming from the domestic market. So because we've been training our staff from the beginning not to differentiate between the local and the foreign. So they're quite used to dealing with the domestic market. And so as a result, we have a fairly good following who have been really supporting us last year and also this year. So what we did this year is, as Malik said, they didn't slash our rates, but we really slashed the rates. We did it for a couple of reasons. One is we also needed the cash flow. And number two was it was also good for the staff, because they would get some service charge and some, additional income. And we also thought it was a good opportunity because, again, as Malik said, people don't have any opportunity to go out. They can't travel overseas. So maybe we thought we could give the locals more opportunity to visit, to travel within Sri Lanka and maybe see some of our properties, because we were giving this service to the foreigners. And why not let more people in Sri Lanka be able to afford it? Because, so that is why we really slashed. Some of our hotels are selling 50-60% below what we would have normally sold. And so that we thought we would like them to come. We would like more people to come, experience what Jetwing has to offer. And and then just enjoy. So that was our reason, Katherine.
Great, thank you. We have one more question that's come up around hotels and DMCs. And I think this is a good one because we have both perspectives on this panel. And this is from Luna. The relationship between hotels and DMCs is changing. Would like to hear how we can support one another during these challenging times. Any thoughts? I mean, it's a big question, but any thoughts of how best, hoteliers and accommodation providers and DMCs can work even harder together to collaborate for a greater good? I'm going to go to Harith first.
Okay, so Luna works with me. Hi, Luna.
Did you set up that question?
Not at all. I told her not to ask that question.
He's going to be in trouble.
Yeah. No, it's two extremes, actually. There are a lot of hotels who are actually very cordial, very supportive, working very closely with DMCs, trying to, work with them and give solutions to possible operators and the tourists, so to say. And there are certain hotels who are quite rigid and not flexible at all, and they just dependent on one or two operators or one or two OTAs. So I see a mix of both. The one who's very proactive, who has a super product, super sales network, always wins. And the DMCs need to work with those hotels. So it's a complicated question. My view is that there's a lot of relationship thing going on. I think 50% we need to work with the hotels and give solutions to them, because just asking a low rate is not the only negotiating point. But at the same time, we need to have a very good IT background so that we can sell the hotel as well as a good sales network. So it takes both commitment from both, and namely the two associations. We have been working closely. That's the DNA of our industry, and we need to continue to do that, to develop that.
That's great. And from a hotel perspective, Henry, like thinking about that relationship has always been really important for an accommodation provider. What do you think accommodation providers need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're all bleeding at the moment, so it's a difficult one, from a financial point of view. Obviously, we can still do trainings. we can, to a certain extent, still do fam trips and things like that when we're able to take people with low occupancies. I think two of the things that we've done. One is that we have actually offered to commissions on local bookings, so on the resident rates as well. You know, our resident rates are already significantly discounted, but any DMCs that are able to fill our beds, they do still get a small commission as well. And I think, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think the flexibility in cancellation policies, I think it's got to be one of the most important things when it comes to driving future business. And I do see the tour operators, travel agents, DMCs being busier than ever in the future. I do think, you know, I know that this is a tough time, but one thing that it actually highlighted back in March when everyone was scrambling to get home or having to cancel their hotel stays, you know, you hear horror stories about people who have booked on, you know, online and things like that and not getting their money back. And this kind of, I'm not necessarily talking about Sri Lanka here, just globally, but I think anyone basically who booked through a tour operator had a safety net. And I think, you know, the general public will have heard about these stories, and I think they'll be going back to their tour operators, possibly with their tail between their legs, because in the past they've shunned them, and actually be going to them saying, right, we're definitely going to be booking with you next time we go away. That may not be for a few months, but when it does happen, I think it's a positive sign for the DMCs and tour operators as well.
Do you think that
right now, obviously, but
no, down the track, do you think that the consumer is going to switch to using traditional intermediaries versus direct, or do you think they're going to continue with their own paths? It's a really interesting question, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts, Malik.
Yeah, I mean, I think I fully echo what Henry is saying, because trust is the new currency. People are hesitant. They want someone to hold their hand when they travel, particularly long haul. DMC trade partners are very critical to Resplendent, and we have some great relationships and a lot of activity for 2021, not so much for 2020, obviously. So I think the generic OTAs, this anonymity is going to be impacted, certainly for long haul countries like Sri Lanka. Yes, maybe not for Europe, but if you're traveling all this way, they want someone to hold their hand if necessary. So I think travel advisors and DMCs will come into their own for the next few years. And I think they should defend their turf through value-added services, through helping position Sri Lanka as a sustainable destination, so we benefit together. I think the critical thing is alignment of vision between DMCs, tour operators, and hoteliers. That can be a challenge at times. As Harith said, it shouldn't just be a price game, but how do we want to position the country? And all of the elements should work in the same direction, because if you're pushing in different directions, then of course the strategy will fail. So I fully agree with Henry that the trade business is going to come back strongly. I don't see the OTAs growing at the same rate as they were before the crisis. I mean, Airbnb is not a good example, but see how their business has been devastated.
Thank you. Shiromal, I would love to hear from you on this area as well, obviously. Your perspective of this relationship, wearing both hats.
Yeah, so I agree with all of them. And as Henry and Malik said, I think the DMCs are going to be more in demand because there is a special service they provide. Because they find they go and look for the business, they look for the tour operators who would be interested in promoting Sri Lanka. Or maybe if they are not interested, we even entice them to promote the country. So once we understand the tour operators' requirement for the product, we would come back to Sri Lanka and then look at the hotels or the products that are needed by that operator, and then package it together and send it out. So again, as Malik said, this need, there was a bit of a question as to whether this intermediary was necessary, but now this particular pandemic has really reinforced the need for a DMC in any country, because they do not just the hand holding, they do the kind of the matchmaking also. It makes the tour operators' life easier, They don't have to do so many regular visits. We do a lot of work for them in the country, which they would have otherwise had to come to the country and do. And same way, even on behalf of the hotel here, we do a lot of marketing, we get flash offers from them. So there's a lot of interaction, coordination that is being done. Plus, of course, the hand-holding of a customer when they are in need is also a great thing. But I like what Henry said, that they're giving commission to the local agents. I didn't know that, Henry, because we are not giving. And there's this big tussle between Jetwing Hotels and Travels, because the Travels guys want the commission and hotels are saying, sorry, they're already really discounted and we can't. So we'll be coming to you, Henry.
We'll be sold out.
Okay. I've got another question that's come up, which I'm very mindful of time, but I really like some of these questions. And are you all fine for another 5 minutes? I know we've been on for a bit, but we've still got a great group listening. So not some great news that happened this week. Prush has come up with this question. The latest news released by the World Bank yesterday downgraded Sri Lanka from an upper middle income to a lower middle income country. And so we've moved down. And so really your comments on that, and, you know, from a tourism lens, is this an issue? I don't know a lot about the background of measurements, etc. Malik, what's your thought?
No, not at all. I mean, the level is $4,045. We were $4,090 last year. Now we're $4,020. So it's just a technicality. I don't think it's relevant at all. It can be relevant in as much as we might attract a little bit more support and a little bit more aid where it's needed, because in the past we were told that because we graduated to upper middle, but upper middle is from 4,045 to 12,000 and we were 4,060. So that $30–40 difference meant that we were cut out from a lot of assistance and concessionary terms that we would otherwise be eligible for. So in a way, it might be an ego thing, but from a practical purpose to help us recover post-COVID, I think is excellent.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to add to that? No, we're good.
I think actually it will only help Sri Lanka tourism, because a lot of the new tourists likes to go and help countries. And something like this, they will want to come and help and see sustainable projects. So the various things. So for me, it's not that downgrade that worries me. The Forbes.com ranked us 85th in Corona safe countries. Bangladesh was one notch higher than us. That was worrying. Those are things that can have an impact on us. So I don't know how they did that, but we need to sort those things out. The economic part, I don't really see an impact there.
I think that was more economic resilience, Harith. So it was actually, the title was not accurate in that article. I agree with you. It was confusing.
So I've got another interesting point here, and this is my last question, or it's a point which I think is quite, our topic today has been, you know, passion, purpose, resilience, etc. And this comment has come in that says, I feel that it's important to remind everyone periodically, both employees and visitors, that what we are currently going through should be likened to the ripple effect. At some point, the ripple will die down and things will settle into a rhythm that everyone will be more comfortable with. A positive outlook and focus on keeping the hope alive without getting discouraged. Now, I hope that person is a member of our alliance, because it's that sort of attitude that is really important at this time. So thank you for that person, Ashan, to send that. Can I just get your last comments before we close off from that perspective of what was said there? Harith.
Why me first all the time?
I know, because you don't want to be first. So I'm like, go for it.
Actually,
so
for me, one scenario I'm looking at is, I mean, I hope, you know, some vaccination is found next couple of months. We are going to go back to our, you know, usual influx of tourists. So that's one scenario. We need to be ready. We need to be positive in that era. Everybody's cutting down, and you know, when tourists come back, there can't be anything. So I'm quite hopeful of that, and I like the way the comment was articulated. Sri Lanka, you know, the whole inbound tourism, we are very resilient. You know, it's part of we have 8 days a week, 8 days crisis. So we are, you know, used to it on a regular basis. So this is not anything new for us. But
Great.
this time I'm comfortable because we are not alone. The whole world is suffering. So in that sense, you know, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Okay, final remarks.
If I can just add something to that, I mean, things will subside hopefully in the next 4 to 5 months, but I sincerely hope we don't go back to where we were before the ripple started, right? Because that's what a lot of what the Alliance is about fixing many of the issues. I don't want to repeat, we all know what the issues are in terms of this over tourism or you know, the quality of the product. So although I agree things will die down, I hope that we will remember and action in terms of improving our product overall. Because if we go back to a complacent state that we might have been in, you know, a couple of years ago when, you know, everything was okay, we got 2.3 million visitors, but there was still a fraction of the potential this country can achieve. So that's something I hope won't happen, that we actually go forward from here rather than back to where we were.
And I think that's a really good point, that this provides Sri Lanka with a reset, especially in that space of, you know, some of those lessons learned that we look at from a more quality and sustainable perspective. Henry, final word from you, please.
Oh, one of the things I was going to say is that Ashan works for Teardrop, so he is actually a member of the Alliance as well. So, but you understand he's a member of the Alliance.
Awesome, we're loving that. That's good. Good job.
But I think, you know, I guess from a final word point of view, and I mentioned it earlier, I do see this as a you know, short to mid-term glitch, and I agree with Malik that when things have improved, when we have a vaccine. Once we all know when the airport's opening and what testing has to be done, I think gradually we will return to, everyone talks about a new normal, but I think it'll go beyond that as well. And I think this time to reset from a sustainability point of view, from all of the projects that we and other members have been doing, I think, you know, it's much as it's been a real struggle from a financial point of view, it has the opportunity to actually make Sri Lanka a much better destination in the future. And I think from 2021 onwards, we should be able to reap the rewards from that.
Thank you. So passion, purpose and resilience. Shiromal, you have as our co-chair of the Sri Lankan Tourism Alliance. You are our final speaker for today. The floor is yours to our listeners to finish.
Yeah, so I just echo what everybody said. I agree with it. And also the human spirit is generally indomitable. You know, we are also creatures. We want to go, we want to explore. We don't want to be cooped in. So I think that's going to take over, and people would still need to have those connections. So I also believe in the future of tourism, as everybody else did. Thanks, Katherine.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all our listeners today. And we look forward to releasing some of the activities from the Alliance in this domestic Sri Lanka Locals campaign. Malik, have you got anything you'd like to wrap up?
I have a final point. The Alliance, all of us together, we made a most beautiful film about We'll See You Again, about Sri Lanka getting ready for tourism, and a 1-minute video. It was to go live on Wednesday, but because of the delay with the airport, we've decided to put it back by a couple of weeks. But we're all, you know, itching to show it to everybody, and we will share it in the next week or two.
That's a great thing, and encouraging everyone to share it. So it's a viral concept, isn't it? So a video to encourage people to return to Sri Lanka soon. So launching that TBC. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. I'm super grateful for what I hope has been a valuable session for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.